We begin with legislative matters. Senate spokesperson Yemi Adaramodu has warned that Nigeria's democracy could suffer if the National Assembly is made a part-time institution. Adaramodu responded to former INEC chairman Atahiru Jega's call for a part-time legislature with reduced moments. He said, and I quote, "If the parliament is on part-time, then democracy is on part-time," stressing that no democracy thrives by weakening its legislature. He argued that lawmakers do more than make laws. They also perform oversight and attend to extensive constituency needs. Adaramodu noted that parliamentarians often provide personal support to constituents and remain the most accessible arm of government. To help us make sense of this, we're joined by a legal practitioner, Toho Seruwaja. Thank you so much, Toho, for joining us on the news.
You're welcome, Lekon.
So is it true that Nigeria's democracy will suffer if its legislature becomes part-time?
Yes, I agree with the Senate spokesman, Senator Yemi. I totally agree, because if you look at it and if you look at the language of our constitution, the legislative arm is the beacon of democracy. As a matter of fact, if you look at the way the Nigeria system is structured in a way whereby we have the equality representation across the state, then we have the representation by the House of Rep based on population. So this is a means where the people are represented. And if we make it a part-time schedule or as canvassed, I believe is a misconception, and it's as a result of the lack of awareness of the duties and responsibility of the legislative arm of government in Nigeria based on their outputs now.
What is the lack of awareness that you refer to?
Well, the lack of awareness begins when you see statesmen, when you see political players canvass or call for order, like the confab, calling for youth representation, calling from youth conference, calling for sectional conference and all those stuff, regional conference, for them to discuss and for them to discuss the way forward for Nigeria. The Constitution has made it clear. If you look at Section 4, and if you look at the Section 4 of the Constitution, it spells out the clear responsibility of the legislative arm of government. And if only we have an effective legislative arm of government, those calls wouldn't have been made. Those calls wouldn't have been made. And those calls are not necessary, because we have a legislative arm of government. Looking at the reason canvassed by the Senate spokesman, you discover that it's a shame that he restricted the functions of the legislative arm of government to giving aid to people. That is really a shame. And that, another thing again, puts the legislative arm of government in the heart of the people to be an arm of government that is not functional.
So how come democracy will not be on recess when the lawmakers go on recess? Because some people feel that it could be cost efficient if the legislature is on part-time. It would not stop them from still carrying out their legislative duties.
Well, Lekon, first of all, you look at the topography of Nigeria. You should look at the topography of Nigeria. Nigeria is a country made of diverse ethnic cultural group, and also with a touch of religion becoming the center of unification. So if you look at it from the perspective of the legislative arm going on recess, putting democracy to a stop, I think that is a wrong perception. Is a total wrong perception. Outside the recess, even the executive arm of government, they go, their recess is like their annual leave, let me use the word, an holiday, which the executive are also entitled to. But let's look at it from the perspective. Look at the functions or the duties of the National Assembly. One is to make laws for the peace, order, and good governance in Nigeria. There is also look at their issue of control of public fund. If you look at it, without the National Assembly, you will see that the budget or every activities of the executive cannot scale through. and you also look at their function of approving appointments. These are issues that are basically that can be run daily basis. The only thing I will canvass for, or the only thing I think the misconception we have in the public domain, is that the bicameral system of legislature in Nigeria have not been fully up to their responsibility. Yeah, in Nigeria as a country, the legislative arm of government cannot be put on part-time if we only have a legislative arm of government that knows what the responsibility and what they ought to do.
So then if the legislature has not really lived up to its billing in terms of its duties, does it now mean that the Nigerian National Assembly has not exhibited or upheld the values of democracy?
For me, I believe in the principle of that the quality of leaders you produce is a reflection of the capacity of the individuals they rule. That is my own belief. So we are not, we as Nigerians, or we those who are politicians who see politics as a career rather than a way of life. I think the fact remains that particularly this current National Assembly is really a shame, and is going to go down in the history of Nigeria as, we are not going to say, I think I'm going to say they should be the worst, because we don't want to see something that is more complex and that is more subjective than this one we are having now. One, I'll give you a clear example. I'm aware of a senator who celebrated giving members of his constituency 50,000 naira. That is the duty of a senator. Then you will now see that, during the time of Obasanjo, that is where they sneak in this constituency project, because they have nothing to do with execution of projects. But I think Obasanjo find a way of trying to pamper them or trying to put them in check, because money does everything in Nigeria. That was where, if you look at the constitution, and the functions of the National Assembly, you discover that there is nowhere it is stated that constituency project, and the oversight function which they ought to carry out, you see that is in shambles. We've seen, as the days goes by, even the executive disregard the Senate, disregard the National Assembly, because of they don't know their honors, they don't know what they are doing. If you can see a spokesman who can come out and count the functions of the legislative and to be giving aid, attending a naming ceremony, I think we as a country, we need to be in a sober reflection mood towards the purpose and function of the legislative arm. But I am not, and I think I'm of the view that part-time at this point in time in Nigeria is not an option.
Thank you so much, Toho Sariwaja, for sharing your thoughts with us on the news.
You're welcome, Lekon.